So how do you do that? Well, you're not going to go to sleep for 3 months. So what are you going to do? Well, just quit eating sugar for a long time. So where should your sugar be? So you are normal. That's what I'm trying to put here. You are normal. So your blood sugar should be between 70 and 90. There you go. That's where you want it to be, between 70 and 90. Or if you're in Canada, between 4 and 5. Don't listen to the diabetic people that say, well, it's okay for diabetics to be 120 or 130. You know, that's expected. As long as you're under 150, you're okay. No, that's not reality. The reality is you don't want to have any of the problems with insulin resistance. You don't want to go into renal failure and have dialysis, and you don't want to have Alzheimer's disease.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fix Blood Sugar webinar. We're excited to have you for another wonderful day with Dr. Saunders and the Joe Barton. Thanks for tuning in. If you'll notice, you can see my brand new locker behind me that I'm very excited about, which is why I left the blur off my camera.
The pink locker.
I really should have gotten an affiliate code from Target for this darn locker because I'd be in the millions by now, I'm pretty sure. Isn't it lovely? It comes in multiple colors and it hides all your stuff. So anyway, I brought that up on the last webinar and I got a bunch of messages actually about it. And so I was like, I guess I'll show it. I'll show the full thing.
Oh, David's back from Colombia.
He is, you know what? He is just always here. I appreciate that. That is so fun.
Mira, David, ¿cuánto tiempo tienes en Colombia? Yo tengo un amigo mío que está aquí ahora de Colombia.
I think you said, what time is it there?
No.
The time here is something tiempo. I heard tiempo.
He says he's been there. He's been in Colombia for 7 years.
Oh, man.
Wow.
My Spanish app is not helping. All right. Awesome. I'm glad that you are here, guys. Say hello when you hop on. Say hello in the chat. It's going to be a really good webinar today. We're going to chat about what do I do when my blood sugar numbers get really high. Now, I know some of you have messaged us and, guten Tag. I took 2 years of German too, so I know a few things. Although actually that's not true. The only things I really remember, I think I've said this before, is das dein moped? That's about the only sentence I really remember.
So hello from Toronto. Do you know how to say hello in Torontoese?
Hello. Well, no, actually the other thing I remember is hallo Jens. That was the other thing I remember. That means hello. Hello. Okay. Anyway, we have a lot of people that message us and talk about what should I do when my numbers get really high, you know, kind of an emergency type situation. And so I want to dig into some of this. What is considered high? Where should our numbers be? When should we be concerned? And then let's see what Dr. Saunders has to say about all this. So I am going to just remind you that Dr. Saunders is not your doctor, although he is wonderful. Oh boy, Joe, we got a lot going on over there. That's awesome. We do recommend that you consult with your healthcare provider before you implement any of the things that we talk about today. So let's go ahead and start with this. First of all, where do we want our numbers to be? And maybe I should clarify this because I think there's sometimes some confusion. Where should our numbers be in the morning or where should they be after we eat? Is there a difference?
Okay, that's a great question. So as far as numbers, gosh, you know, I don't know the numbers from Canada really well, but I know you want to be between 4 and 5. I know 7.0 is about the equivalent of 130-ish. So that kind of gives you so 30. So 7 gets you a little high. Those are Canadian numbers. So the optimum numbers, if you're in Canada, is between 4 and 5. That's where you want to be, and that's like 68. But we always say 70 to 90 just to make it easy in the United States numbers. So 70 to 90 on your glucose meter. Or if you have a continuous glucose monitor, man, those are awesome. You could check it, but you want they give you this really wide range on your CGM. This your graph is like, I think it goes from like 80 to 120 or something, or 150, and it doesn't beep until you're outside of 150 or below 80. If you're in the 70s, but really the optimum range between 70 and 90, that's where normal is. So what they're giving you a range of on your CGM is diabetics. Is like, this is okay when you're diabetic to be in this range. You don't really want to be below that range because you might be dropping down too low if you're giving yourself insulin. And then if you're going out of that range, then that means you're going up too high. So then that's why they give you that range for diabetics. It's entirely different from what a normal range is. So consider yourself normal. If you have type 2, then you are a normal person. Remember, we talked about this before. If a bear goes out and eats a bunch of honey, okay, so bears are feeding on fish, and you know what? They don't get diabetes. And then they start feeding on berries and honey, and they start eating all these carbs, like 100% carbs. They quit eating meat entirely. And they're stuffing their face with 100,000 berries a day, and then getting honey when they can, and like eating the whole, like all of it, including the wax and everything. It all goes down. And so what happens to the bear? It gets diabetes, like insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, high blood sugar, high insulin levels, obesity around the middle. They're like the whole schmear, everything, just like a human being. Like, they're almost like humans. No, they're not. Just kidding. But anyway, metabolically speaking, that's what happens to the bear when it eats sugar. So what does it do then? It goes into a cave and hibernates for months, 2 to 3 months. And what happens during that time? Well, guess what? The bear's fasting. And the bear's burning this fat that it produced, and the fat makes metabolic water, so it's still making a little bit of water, so it doesn't have to drink any water or anything. So during this time, the bear is dry fasting for 1 to 3 months. Dry fasting, right? Think about that. And what happens? Everything's fixed. Perfectly normal metabolism. They get up in the summer, they go back, and the salmon are swimming up the stream again, and they go, salmon. They go and start eating like crazy again, and they gain their weight back. But they don't get diabetes until they start eating the carbs, right? The sugar, the berries, right? So if you have type 2, you're just like a bear. You're perfectly normal. You have metabolically gone to that. So it's time for you to hibernate. So how do you do that? Well, you're not going to go to sleep for 3 months. So what are you going to do? Well, just quit eating sugar for a long time. So where should your sugar be? So you are normal. That's what I'm trying to put here. You are normal. So your blood sugar should be between 70 and 90. There you go. That's where you want it to be, between 70 and 90. Or if you're in Canada, between 4 and 5. Don't listen to the diabetic people that say, well, it's okay for diabetics to be 120 or 130. That's expected. As long as you're under 150, you're okay. No, that's not reality. The reality is you don't want to have any of the problems with insulin resistance. You don't want to go into renal failure and have dialysis, and you don't want to have Alzheimer's disease. You want to avoid these things, and people who listen to the diabetes specialists end up with dialysis. It's the number one cause of dialysis, even in people who have diabetes specialists. They still go on dialysis. Why? Because they're allowed to go, it's okay for you to be 150. I had a patient, oh my gosh, this was crazy. So this kid, how old is she? 19 years old. She gets a virus or something, and then she gets worse and worse and worse, ends up going to the hospital. The hospital says she's in ketoacidosis. and they put her in an intensive care unit. Her pancreas is making zero insulin, none. So they finally get her out of ketoacidosis. They're injecting insulin into her, and they're saying, okay, for the rest of your life, you're going to have to inject this insulin. And she goes to the dietitian, the nutritionist at the hospital. Nutritionist goes, okay, you can eat anything you want as long as you just inject more insulin. Then that's okay. So if your blood sugar goes up to 200, just inject more insulin, and everything is okay. And so she goes, oh, cool. So she's eating all the junk food and everything. Insulin, her blood sugar's going up. She's injecting insulin's dropping down. Then she eats it and it goes up, and her blood sugar is all over the place. Really inconsistent. I mean, like, we're talking 300 to 500 on one end, down into the 60s on the other end, and she's just like popping up and down like crazy, and doesn't know where she is half the time, and even with a continuous glucose monitor was not able to figure it out. So she came in to see me, and we decreased her insulin, just gave her one long-acting insulin, just one dose of long-acting insulin a day, and then kept her on a very strict low-carb diet. And she was doing really well for a year. Put her on a autoimmune protocol. I found out she had autoimmune diabetes, put her on autoimmune protocol, and then her pancreas started making insulin again. So then anyway, so she's doing much better. She's getting off the insulin, and things are going okay. So the point is, the blood sugar can be all over the place, but that's not a good thing. Don't listen to that. You want it between 70 and 90. So how do you do that? The way to do that is to do phase 1 of the program. When you do phase 1 of the program, then your insulin resistance will go away. You'll have really good insulin sensitivity, so that your own pancreas can keep your blood sugar between 70 and 90 all the time. That's all you're doing. So what's the worst it ever gets? Well, I've seen people 800. But we always worry when you're that high, you're going to go into a coma, because the osmotic pressure changes with everything. Your eyeballs change, but all your cells change too, even your brain. So you have to be really careful when your blood sugar is getting that high. And the simple thing to do is, some people will need insulin because you don't make enough insulin. Those are the type 1.5s. They're technically type 2 because their pancreas makes some insulin, but they don't make enough. So if they eat too much sugar, then it just goes up, and there's no stopping that, because their pancreas won't put out more insulin to bring it down. So you have to be really careful if that's what you have. So each person has to deal with this in a different way, depending on the output of their insulin and how much insulin resistance they have. And the simple way to fix this problem is just to do phase 1 of the program, and not bring in any carbs that can raise your blood sugar. That's what I would do.
Oh, we lost Leslie.
Did we lose Leslie?
It looks like it. I was just researching bear quotes and headlines. I was thinking of how can we use your bear story to share that with others. And I was looking up Dwight Schrute quotes from The Office. How bears attack their diabetes.
They sleep. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They quit eating. That's what they do. They fast.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. You've talked about hummingbirds before, how they get diabetes every day and then they reverse it at night.
By fasting through the night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good to think about ourselves, if we have diabetes, as like, well, I guess I can just be like a bear then, and stop eating the berries and fast for a while, sleep, stop eating until my numbers come down, and then switch over to salmon or fish or no carbs. And That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, seems Leslie abandoned ship. Let's see if we can find some questions here to get into. Frank and Pat Hugh, thanks for this question. Can I start phase 1 without Synechroma and Nervala, as it takes 4+ weeks for my order to arrive in Ontario?
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Phase 1 is the program. The Nervala and the Synechroma are adjuncts or helps. Something that, it's just common to have deficiencies of chromium and selenium and vanadium and vitamin D, and those help you to become insulin sensitive. But you still have to do phase 1. So just start phase 1. Yeah, just do it.
All right. And she's back. She decided to not abandon us, so that's good. Hello, Leslie.
Yeah, I figure I better not. Sorry, I feel like I missed good stuff here. All right, so
You
tell me,
did.
what did you just talk about?
We talked about bears.
Bears? Is that what you said? VAERS?
No, bears.
Oh, I was like, you went there?
BEA.
Okay.
Bears.
BEARS. Bears
Oh,
getting
yes, yes.
diabetes every year before they hibernate.
And there was a question I saw somebody had asked right before my internet decided to stop working about what exactly is, I think you call it dry fasting. Was that the right word?
Yeah, dry fasting is nothing goes in your mouth, period. And like everyone who's done this dry fasting, that's what I do. I do 3 days once a month. So last weekend I did it, and it's not convenient. I gotta tell you, it's not convenient. It's hard because so this weekend, what was it? It was a birthday party, and that I went to, and then there was another party after church, and of course there's food there, and everybody's bringing food, and there's all this stuff, and they're going, have you tried my sandwich? Have you tried my this? And I'm like, no. Why not? Because I'm fasting. Oh, and then there's of course this big conversation about fasting and how horrible it is for you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's hard. But 3 days of no food, no water. And the studies on animals have shown that it is significantly better than drinking water while you're fasting. And I don't know of any human studies, and I don't know of any humans that will do it. In fact, when people who had cancer, though these are people dying of cancer, they're in like stage 3, stage 4 cancer, they're getting chemotherapy. And Dr. Walter Longo comes to them and says, look, our animal studies show that your chemotherapy will work better, and you will have better outcomes, and you won't lose your hair, and you won't get sick, and you'll feel better if you will fast 2 days before the chemotherapy and 1 day after. And more than 80% of people said, no way, I'm never doing that.
Wow.
It's only 3 days. And it's like I would rather get sick and vomiting and losing my hair and not have the chemotherapy work than fast for 3 days. And so that's how averse people are to this not eating thing. It's really a big deal, but really because people are averse to it, not because it causes any problems.
Wow. Very interesting. I don't know that we've gotten into this yet. First of all, I can't see into the questions well, I can only see up till when I logged back in. So I might need some help with some of those questions. But before we go there, I want to talk about what is considered, maybe you said this already, but what is considered to be high blood sugar? What's too high?
Okay, so too high is, anything over 200 is where you start getting blood spilling or glucose spilling into the urine. Generally, some people it's a little more than that. Whatever, people are different as far as that goes. But 300 is really high. But like I said, I've seen people 800, and you worry about going into a diabetic coma when you're that high. So that's pretty bad. So yeah, don't let it get that high.
So when you talk about glucose spilling into the urine, is this the reason that many people with type 2 need to use the restroom quite often? Is it because of that glucose, or what is the reason for that?
Yeah, it's because the glucose. So the all of the glucose from your blood, when it goes into the kidney filters, all of the glucose goes through the filter and into the kidney. It's called the parenchyma of the kidney. And then the kidney has to reabsorb that, like one molecule at a time, back into the blood out of the urine. It has to suck it all back in. Well, you only have a certain amount of capacity to do that. And so when you're getting so much blood and the urine's just going through there, really, you're drinking a lot of water. There's a lot of urine going through, and there's only so much capacity to bring those molecules, one molecule at a time, out back into the blood. Then it just starts spilling over into the urine.
Would it make sense then, let's say you've struggled with type 2, your blood sugars were high, now you've used the diabetes solution kit and your numbers are in the normal range. Should you be doing some type of a kidney cleanse? Is that a thing?
Um, I don't know if a kidney cleanse is a thing, because the kidneys are one of those things that it works when it works, and it doesn't work when it doesn't work. And when you can't like give the kidneys a rest or anything like that. Uh, uh, you don't get like kidney function back again when you lose kidney function. You pretty much, when you've lost that filter, it's gone. The filter's gone. So it's not like you get it back. Now, a liver cleanse is a real thing. You actually do cleanse the liver. You actually do repair the liver. The liver regenerates cells. It regenerates abilities to make things. It regenerates the glycogen, the storage of sugar. Regenerates all kinds of the chemicals needed to detox, all of this stuff. So the liver's a real thing. There really is a liver detox, but I don't think there's a kidney cleanse. I don't know how that would work.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So now let's say our numbers are in the 200 plus range. Maybe they're 300. We woke up, they were that high. We're like, what do we do? What do we start with? Let's say it's emergency. You want to dig in and get these numbers down quickly. What are some options?
Thank you. That's a great question. The rule is don't freak out. You know what? If you get really upset and stressed by this, the stress hormones will prevent you from getting your blood sugar back to normal a lot worse than anything else. So it's like, oh, okay, my blood sugar is a little high. Maybe I shouldn't eat this morning. Or if you're insulin deficient, maybe I should inject some insulin. But if it's that high, like in the morning, or really anytime, if you're over 300, the really simplest thing to do is drink water, and like salt water or broth or something like that. And don't eat anything. Just like wait till it comes down, because it's high for a reason. And if you're eating stuff, you're adding on top of it. So don't add on top. Don't add toxins to toxicity. You gotta detox that. So by not eating.
How about exercise? Is that something that helps?
Oh, that's so smart. Absolutely. Do you know, a good exercise is as useful as taking a shot of insulin, because your muscle cells don't need insulin to bring sugar or glucose into the muscle if you're exercising. So yeah, that's a wonderful thing to do.
Okay, good. All right. What else am I thinking? Stress relief type things. Is there research out there on, say, breath work or cold plunging, those type of things, and how they may reduce our blood sugar numbers?
I haven't seen any. I don't know of any.
Okay. All right. This is good. And then long term. So we're finding that we're waking up every day. Our numbers are maybe 300 plus. Where do we start?
Okay, long term, and that's what we were talking about before. Do the diabetes solution kit, do phase 1, do the program, because that's a detox. Yeah, someone just asked a question about dry fasting. So what's dry fasting? Yeah, pretty much 72 hours, no food, no water. And that is probably the single healthiest thing you can do of anything that you can do with your life. If you want to stay healthy, it cures cancer, it prevents cancer, it cures diabetes, it prevents diabetes, it gets rid of inflammation. If you just do one day, then you don't get all those benefits. 3 days is really what it takes to get the greatest benefit. And after that, you still get more benefit if you do 5 or 10 or more, but that not the shutting down the inflammatory systems and stuff like that. Your benefit after the 3 days is really you do more fat burning, autophagy. Autophagy is taking out all the dead cells and all the cancer cells and all the tau proteins and all the waste stuff that your body's just been storing. After 3 days, you do a lot of detoxing and stuff. But your greatest benefit is those 72 hours.
Okay. And let's say you're brand new to fasting and you try this. I'll just be really honest with you. I tried to dry fast one day. I remember the first time I ever tried to do it was years ago. Another girl and I on the team tried to do it. And I remember I think I dry fasted for like until noon and I thought I was dying. So sometimes it doesn't go that well to start. But what I was just going to recommend is if it's something, if fasting is something that you really want to try to start, Dr. Saunders does talk a lot about the 610 reset. And I think that'd be a good place to start, at least, Dr. Saunders, wouldn't you say, for someone who wants to try something?
Absolutely. Stop eating in the evening. And that's a great place to start. And then just move it back and go, okay, I'll stop at 3. And then I'll stop at noon. And then I'll eat 1 meal a day. And then, I'll go 2 days. And just like keep going like that. And as you train your body to burn fat, think about this. What does a camel do? A camel's got a hump, right? You know what's in the hump? Did you guys know what's in the hump? Seriously,
Water.
Leslie?
Water.
No, that's what everybody says. It's water.
I don't...
It's metabolic water. It's fat. It's fat. And so the camel is dry fasting for sometimes weeks and burning fat. And the fat makes metabolic water. So that's how you don't have to drink water while you're dry fasting. If you're still burning carbohydrates, you do make some metabolic water there too. But the fat is so much better at that. That when you've trained your body to burn fat, then you'll be really surprised. You go, man, I haven't had anything to eat or drink, and I'm not thirsty and I'm not hungry. But I got to tell you, when I do, like, I'll run a 5K a few times a week. And if I run a 5K when I've fasted for a couple of days, I'll drink water afterward. I'm not gonna, be seriously dehydrated. So just so that you know, it's not like, don't be obsessive about this. If you're really thirsty, for heaven's sakes, drink some water.
Okay, this is good. Joe, you may be able to see some of these questions, the ones that I am not able to see, but I believe there was a question that said, my synochroma and I think Nervalo won't be here for another 3 weeks.
We talked about that one.
Okay, perfect. I was like, I know I saw that question. The first one that I can see is one from Thomas, and Thomas says, what of persons with diabetes over the last 40 years plus? Is there any hope? Okay, so I'm assuming Thomas has had diabetes for the last 40 years. Is there any hope for Thomas?
Okay, Thomas, there's hope. Okay, let's do this. Thomas, go get 4 tests. Ask your doctor or go to the local lab or whatever, get 4 tests. Get glucose, and that's usually in a metabolic panel. It's going to have glucose. And hemoglobin A1C, they've probably done that a lot, and C-peptide and insulin. And then next week, come back and enter those numbers in so that Leslie can see them, and then we'll talk about how much hope you have and what kinds of things you can do. But yes, there's hope either way, no matter what the issue is. But we can start off with trying to find out what's been going on for 40 years. Is this 40 years because your pancreas isn't making insulin, or is this because your pancreas is making insulin and you're just really insulin resistant or something? So yeah, let's find out.
Good. Okay. Linda says, how can one overcome sugar addiction?
Okay. What is addiction? Addiction is I need. And it's I need in spite of anything else. So when people need something, and so the sugar addiction is I need I need the dopamine is really what it comes down to. If you look at the bottom line of everything, it's dopamine. So and sugar gives me dopamine, and it just like I need it. So you know how some people need milk? Do you know why? It's because there's milk proteins that bind to opiate receptors, which are heroin receptors, and gives them dopamine when they drink milk. So some people are addicted to milk for that reason. There are all kinds of things that people are addicted to, and how do you deal with that? And there are a lot of different ways of dealing with it, and ultimately, it's if you try to say, okay, I'm just not going to eat sugar, and how long is that going to work? Well, that'll work for so long. It's kind of like, how long can you hang on a bar? Okay, I can hang on. No, this is easy. This is no problem. I can hang on here. Yeah, just wait 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, are you going to still be hanging on to that bar? Well, that's kind of like, these people with addictions trying to just white knuckle it through and say, okay, I'm not gonna shoot up my heroin today. I'm not gonna do it. I need it. That kind of thing really doesn't work well. You need to replace that with something else. And replacing it with a way of getting dopamine that's better. I've told the story before about a woman in my office. Her husband was a police officer. She had a teenage son. Well, he wasn't quite a teenager yet, but he was going into high school. And she's like, I've been on heroin. She came in to see me. I've been on heroin for 10 years or 20 years or something like that. And I really want to get off it. My husband doesn't know about it. My kid doesn't know about it. And so she's like, how do I do that? We tried everything and nothing worked. But then one day, a couple of years later, I saw her, and she was the human resources director at a business in town. I'm like, what are you doing here? She goes, clean and sober for over a year. And I'm like, okay, how did you do it? She said, have you ever heard of a runner's high? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, when I need a hit, I go for a run. And I push hard, and I push really hard. And when I hit the wall, I'm like, yes. And I push through the wall, and I get the adrenaline or the endorphin rush. And endorphins is what? It gives you dopamine, right? So it's the same as heroin, essentially. And she goes, that works for me. So I've had several people where exercise, pushing exercise, whether it's running or other forms of exercise, swimming, bicycling, other stuff. When they push hard through the wall and they get that endorphin rush, they go, okay. So if you need some sugar, go for a run. But somehow you got to replace it with something else. And replacing it with another food isn't always the best way. I replaced my Skittles with raisins, and then I realized, oh man, that's just another sugar bag. So then I decided that I would do almonds. And now I'm doing a lot better. I don't have the addictions like I used to have it. So it's kind of gone away. I still get the cravings though periodically, and And yeah, and sometimes I even eat some.
I have noticed that since using magnesium consistently, our spray magnesium, I don't crave chocolate like I used 2 years ago, which I think is really
Ah,
interesting.
that's interesting because chocolate's high in magnesium. I wonder if you were just kind of deficient in
I
magnesium.
know, I do wonder that because it was always kind of like my go-to thing. I was always like, oh, chocolate. And now I'm like, I don't crave it like
Huh.
I used to. I do have another friend. I actually just talked to her this morning. She said she has given up sugar and it was really hard at first, but now there is something really satisfying about knowing it's something in her life that she has control over. She can avoid it and she's in control of that. And that almost gives her like that dopamine rush, which is kind of fun.
Control, being in control gives her
Yes.
dopamine rush. Oh, that's
Yep.
interesting.
I
Ooh,
know. I'm like, I
yeah.
get that. I can see that
Well,
might
yeah. As someone who needs to be in control, I don't know if I want to be her friend.
Yeah, I think too, sometimes it's when you can't control anything else. I
Yeah.
had another story of a lady who had lost a child, and she said the one thing that she felt so out of control, but the one thing she could control was her diet and what she was eating, which many people, when things like that happen, they could care less. But it gave her a sense of control of something in her life and it really helped her. And so I don't know if it's when you're feeling out of control that you have something you can do. Everyone's different. So, but that may work for somebody. Okay, question here from Krish. Are there cases known diabetic? Okay, hold on. I gotta read this. Joe texted these to me and I'm not sure what this says. Are there cases known diabetic subject has all three? Oh, can you have all three types of diabetes? 1, 2, and 3.
Well, no, no, because type 1 is no insulin, 0, none. Type 2 is too much insulin. So they're opposites, clearly. Type 1.5 is that in between. Okay, wait. Type 1.5 is like in between. You make insulin, but not enough. And then type 3 is type 2. Type 2 is a complication. Type 3 is a complication of type 2, is really all it is. So that's like saying that being on dialysis is type 4 diabetes. No, that's just a complication of type 2 diabetes. So the same with the Alzheimer's or the dementia. They're calling it type 3, but it's really just a complication of type 2.
I've seen a couple different questions here. Feel free, guys, if you could put your questions in the Q&A, that's where I can manage them the best. But I've seen a couple messages about you've given some numbers of, these are the recommended numbers where people's blood sugar should be. Is that true for people of all ages? 25-year-old and a 90-year-old?
Yeah, a 1-year-old. Yeah, a newborn baby. They check the blood sugar of the newborn baby because, especially if the mom has diabetes or diabetes of pregnancy, and they need to be between 70 and 90. Yeah, everyone, all the way through your age doesn't matter.
Lots of questions about those tests, and I'm going to post those in the chat again so you can see what those tests are, and then you can write them down or whatever you would prefer to do. Okay, Sienna says, I just had my C-peptide test, which is 1.1.
1.1, nice.
Okay, my weight has come down to 106, and I am 5.5 feet. No, I'm 5.5 feet high and 68 years old, female. I followed your phase 1 from last May. I now practice 168 intermittent fasting, 2 meals a day. My A1C is now 6.0 from 6.4 6 months ago. My total cholesterol is 212, triglyceride 130, HDL is 81, and LDL is 104. So shall I quit metformin and now switch to berberine?
Well, I would. I think, your insulin resistance is significantly decreased. Your hemoglobin A1C is significantly decreased. 6.0 is still high, but it's really pre-diabetes. It's not, it's you're on a scale, and you're down far enough on the scale that I would do berberine instead of metformin. And then I think continuing phase one, because ideally you want to get your hemoglobin A1C into the 5.0 to 5.4 range. So 5 to 5.4 is where you want it to be. So keep going. The C peptide was a number. We don't hear about that a lot. So I want everybody to know the C peptide 0.8 to 1.2 is where you want it to be. And hers is 1.1, which on a fasting specimen, that means she's making enough insulin, but not too much insulin. So if you look at the lab will give you this really wide range from like 0.8 to 4 or something like that, 3.8 or whatever it is. And that's much too wide because that doesn't take into account a fasting specimen and optimum level. So it should be between 0.8 and 1.2.
Okay. Another question. Michelle said, I thought berries were the lowest sugar fruits, better than apples, peaches, oranges, etc. I missed this part, so.
Yeah, that's why the bears need to eat like 100,000 of them a day. It's like they're gorging on berries. They're not just eating a few berries.
Yeah.
So when you eat a handful of berries, yeah, no big deal.
Okay. Krish says, how do doctors diagnose type 2 subject that also has type 1? I think we kind of touched on this.
Yeah. So very often they won't look at the insulin level, so they don't know what the insulin is. So then people who come in and they're overweight, and then they automatically assume it's type 2, and so they diagnose it as type 2 and don't know what the insulin level is.
Okay. Maria said, I fell 2 months ago, landing on the left side of my forehead. I wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning above my left eye. I wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning above my left eye. I check my blood sugars and they are elevated 225 to 250. I then have a light headache for the remainder of the day. My blood sugars come down to 130, 150. I have been walking 3 miles a day and my blood sugars go up. Is this due to stress from my headaches? And what can I do to bring them down?
Okay. Very likely headaches, stress, an injury, internal bleeding, like whatever you have above your eyes, probably a big lump of like a hematoma or something. And all of that makes the blood sugar go up. Any kind of stress does, but yes, injuries do too. So during this time, don't worry about your blood sugar. Don't think that, oh, I have to bring it down. You don't have to bring it down. It can be 150 and 200 and 250 for a period of time. That's okay. Really what to take care of is, why are you getting headaches? If you've fallen and had a lump above your eye, if you're still getting headaches, maybe you should consider a concussion, consider a CT scan. Sometimes there's bleeding internally that's really slow. Epidural or subdural hematoma, it's called, and it'll just form this mass inside that you can't see and cause pain. So, consider other options if this is still going on. And the blood sugar is the least of your worries if you're having these kinds of symptoms.
Okay, Michelle asked, 70 to 90 glucose is fasting, right? 2 hours after the start of a meal, it isn't expected to be that low, is it?
No, that's good. Yes, no, absolutely not. That's fasting. Your fasting should always be between 70 and 90. But postprandial, if you go up to 100, 110, yeah, that's pretty normal. 120 is kind of a borderline. Yeah, you're getting a little high. 150 is definitely high. So, in that range, or 130 is definitely high. So Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Gary had asked a similar question here too, so glad we did that. Frank and Pat said, is hummus plain tofu, and plain Greek yogurt okay for phase 1?
Well, yeah, I mean, read the carb. The carbs on the hummus are pretty low because see, it depends on what they put in it, because sometimes they'll put other things in it. They'll put oils in it, but I don't see any carbs. So yeah, that's probably pretty good. Tofu is a soybean curd. It's mostly a protein. Most of the carb is taken out. Tofu is pretty good. And let's see, hummus, tofu. What was the third one?
Greek yogurt. I'm looking
Oh,
at all of these, and they're right around 2 grams of carbs per tablespoon.
Yeah, yeah, that's about what they are. So you can just count the carbs, and it's really simple. Wait, Leslie, we didn't hear that.
No, that's per container. So yeah, as long as you're counting your carbs. What'd you
Yeah.
say? Oh,
We didn't
it
hear all that.
says, well, actually, this says per container. They're good. They're good. Greek yogurt's the same. They're all about the same. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see here. Got that one done. All right, David says, my morning blood sugar is around 90. Maybe we already answered this. My morning blood sugar is around 90, but after meals, without any carbs at all, I can't seem to get it below 150 an hour or so after eating. Is the only solution permanently eliminating carbs?
No, that's extreme. Don't assume that. Think of it in a different way, and that is that your body is making a lot of insulin. So every time you eat, you make insulin. And even if you're not having carbs, sometimes the proteins are being made into sugar. It's called gluconeogenesis. So you have this glucose, your liver's making glucose out of proteins. So eating proteins also causes you to increase your insulin, and then fat makes you insulin resistant. So it's not just carbs. Look at it a bigger picture and say, you're insulin resistant. So people who have this kind of problem, I've had people with it, and I've told the story about this couple that I had. Both of them, they weighed about the same amount, almost 250 pounds, and they both had diabetes. And so I put them both on the diabetes solution kit program. So they're doing their no carb thing. And she's losing weight and doing great, and he's not. And so it turned out he was really sensitive to protein, and his practically carnivore diet was every time he would eat protein, he would release a bunch of insulin, and then he would have to. Then his liver was then he'd release glucagon, and his liver would have to make more sugar, and the glucose would go up, and then he's eating fat, right, with the protein. The meat has fat in it, and that makes him insulin resistant. And so it was this terrible cycle, and he's gaining weight and she's losing weight. He's like, what the heck? We're eating the exact same thing. So the deal there was he had to do a intermittent fasting, where he had to have a longer period of time with nothing in his stomach, so that he could get his insulin level down and be more insulin sensitive. And that's what it took, and it worked. And he was kind of upset about that.
Okay. Question from Anonymous. What are the recommended supplements to reverse type 3 diabetes?
Okay. Type 3 refers to the complication of type 2 diabetes, where you can't get glucose through the blood-brain barrier, and your brain shrinks down, and you get memory problems. It's sort of a dementia. People call it Alzheimer's because they call every dementia Alzheimer's, but that's not really what it is. Alzheimer's is a very specific dementia, and type 3 diabetes is a different dementia. It's a metabolic dementia. And so the way to deal with that is, number one, to improve insulin sensitivity. So don't look at it as I can take a pill and fix this problem. It is, how can I burn fat? You want your body to burn fat, because as soon as your body burns fat, then you make ketones. Ketones don't need to be transported into the brain. They go right through the membrane, the blood-brain barrier. And your brain can use that for energy in the areas of your brain that are not working. I read this story many years ago, over 20 years ago, of a doctor whose husband started getting dementia. And so she had him tested, took him to a neurologist, and yeah, he's early dementia and all that. And so she put him on a keto diet with that bulletproof coffee, and she was putting like all this coconut oil. The guy's like eating a ton of oil. But coconut oil has this special medium chain triglycerides in it, and that when they go through your liver, they're made into ketone bodies. They're changed into ketone bodies, which go right through the blood-brain barrier and give the brain energy. And this guy was like healed instantly, like his Alzheimer's went away, his memory came back, and everything was normal. Like from the day she put him on the diet, and so there was this big, I don't know, advertisement about it. I don't know what they were selling, bulletproof coffee or something like that. But it was, this miraculous recovery, right? But there's nothing miraculous about it. It's just when you have this metabolic type of problem, you need to burn fat for energy. So stop eating carbohydrates and your body changes to fat. You may have to, if you have that problem we just talked about a minute ago, and protein, the blood sugar goes up from eating protein, you may have to go off protein as well. And essentially do some more fasting, which would be like intermittent fasting or a 3-day fast, those kinds of things too. That's the way to deal with the metabolic dementia.
Good stuff. All right. How effective is Gymnemia sylvestre in rejuvenating the beta cells in the pancreas?
Okay, Gymnema sylvestre is, gosh, I don't know the effectiveness of it. That's your question. But can it help that? Apparently it can. So apparently it has some effect on the beta cells to allow it to produce insulin where it wasn't producing insulin before. I don't know how it works, and I haven't seen any, I haven't read any research on how it works.
Okay. All right. Michelle says, I weigh 96 to 99 pounds. I'm 5'4", and if I dry fasted for 3 days, I would likely go down to 90 pounds, wouldn't I?
Yeah, that's a good question. You would probably go to 90 pounds, but you could gain it back pretty quickly. The research done by Walter Longo, you might want to read some of his research. Walter, V-A-L-T-R, Longo, L-O-N-G-O, PhD. He's a researcher at USC in Los Angeles, California. And he's done research specifically on this, and his book includes it. And I'm trying to remember from years ago when I read the book. But what happens is you lose weight, you actually lose protein, you lose muscle mass during the 3-day fast. But then when you start eating again, you gain your protein back immediately, your muscle mass back immediately, and gain more because of the anabolic metabolism, but you don't gain the fat back as quickly. So he was saying there's no problem with that even when you're very thin and small. I got to tell you this, my daughter is 5'2" and weighs all of, I don't know, 95 pounds probably. And she's pretty small and pretty thin. And she did a 7-day water fast. And I'm like, after she was done, she told me about it. And I'm like, Charlotte, you can't do that. You only weigh like 90 pounds. She goes, that's why I didn't tell you beforehand. Because she started eating again and she gains it back just fine. Because she's exercising, she's running marathons. So she's not like she's muscular. She's got enough muscles. So as long as you're exercising and using the muscles, you won't use up your muscles too much, and you'll actually gain muscle because of the anabolic metabolism over time. So if you're interested in the research, read Valter Longo's research on that.
All right, question for Joe. Will Joe Barton create packaged nutritious foods for purchase?
We've looked into it. We'll have to talk about that, Dr. Saunders, but supplements and food is two totally different industries, and yeah, just a lot of differences, a lot more expensive, and I think we'll probably end up sticking in the nutritional supplements, and we might get into protein powders or something like that, but we'll see. We're still young, so I'm going to live another 150 years, so you never know what we might come up with. Well, I probably won't live 150 years, but
maybe
I might get, I won't even say it. Who knows? None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So,
all right.
Thanks for the question, though. It helps me to know what people are interested in. So yeah, if anybody has any thoughts, like, hey, why don't you guys, come up with this or that, let us know.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right. Oh, we're out of time. Darn it. Okay, really quick. Is it true? Adam says, isn't it true that you die without water for 3 days?
No, that's not true at all. The longest known record, someone walking through a desert survival, I think it was in Arizona or northern Mexico or something like that, with no water for like 15 days. He was walking through the desert at night, and during the day he slept and shaded under shade or whatever. But yeah, no, 3 days is okay. And if you're burning fat, remember you're making metabolic water. So people like overblow things a lot, and there's no magic number of this is how long you can do something, because humans are resilient. We can do stuff, and we can do hard stuff, and we can do different stuff, and we can go longer and better and faster and do more. In the medical textbooks in the 1800s, there was it said, if you fast more than 10 days, you die. And so all the doctors you'll hear doctors say, oh yeah, if you fast more than 10 days, you'll die. Where does that come from? Well, there was a guy named Sir William Osler who wrote the first medical textbook on internal medicine. And he called up a friend of his who was a metabolic specialist and said, I'm writing this book, and how long can you fast? And the guy said, oh, about 10 days. Okay, 10 days. So he wrote it in. And that became gospel doctrine written in the Bible of medicine, and so now nobody can go against that. And what's really dumb about that is that years before, there was a textbook called, or not a textbook, but a book by a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Upton Sinclair, who wrote a book called The Fasting Cure. And he's talking about 20-day fast and 30-day fast and 50-day fast. And these are people who are drinking only water for this length of time. And he's curing all kinds of diseases and everything. And so it's kind of ridiculous.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Saunders. This has been really, really good. God bless your patience. I think there's some of these questions that I can help answer too. So we'll see you tomorrow, Dr. Saunders.
All right.
See you tomorrow.
Hey, yeah. See you tomorrow, Joe.
Yeah.
They get to hang out together. That's fun. I think they forgot to invite me, but it's fine. Okay. So a couple of these questions here. Let's see. What did I want to answer? Okay, someone had said, Lynn said, I can't tolerate berberine. Is there a way to counteract the side effects? What are your side effects? I will say that sometimes people have some gastrointestinal issues with berberine right away. And the best way to deal with that is to take it slow with berberine, if that's your side effect. But other people have noticed that as well. So maybe instead of taking like the 2 that you normally take at one time, spread those out throughout the day, or just start with smaller doses. When counting carbs, do you subtract the fiber content? Gary would like to know. You do. So make sure that when you're counting the carbs, if you're doing phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit, it is 20 grams of carbs or less per day. And so you're going to take carbs minus fiber to get those net carbs. Let's see, Don said, how much difference is there between phase 1 healthy heart and diabetes solution kits? I have the healthy heart solution kits. Mostly, Don, it's that carb count in phase 1. So you could do the healthy heart solution kit, but phase 1, you want to restrict your carbs to 20 grams of net carbs per day. That's what it would tell you to do in phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit. So there are a lot of people that do both. The beautiful thing is, even if you went to the diabetes solution kit and you did that, your meals would just be high carb, or I'm sorry, oh my goodness, high fiber, not high carb. That'd be a bad deal. So high carb or high fiber with low carb. Okay. Thomas says, is there a difference from age of individual diabetic as to what expect in the glucose reading? And Dr. Saunders answered that question. It doesn't change based on your age. Okay, same question from Tim. Okay, anything else? Who's a good doctor to go to help monitor my blood sugars and make suggestions? So, one thing that Dr. Saunders recommends is if you're really looking for a doctor that is similar to him, look for a functional medicine doctor in your area. So if you hop on the internet, go to Google, research functional medicine doctors in whatever your city is or whatever city is near, and that'll find you a good one. What kind of magnesium is best to take? We've talked about this quite a bit, and I think Dr. Saunders will just say, just whatever, take whatever kind of magnesium. But some people, for example, I have a powder that you mix with water, which is great, except that I don't need that. For example, if you're backed up, if your gut is backed up, those work really well. There are different kinds. I don't need that. I use the Barton spray magnesium, and I use it at night. And so you can find that at bartonwebinar.com or bartonnutrition.com. It's a spray magnesium. And if you use code webinar25, you will save 25%. Any other questions? For phase 1, how for the 2 synochroma daily? Phase 1, when or how? Do what the bottle says. Do what the bottle says. Okay, that's it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Tomorrow we have the Healthy Heart webinar. So if you're able to join, we'd love to have you there. Register. It's free. It's just like this. And we'll take your questions there as well. So go to bartonwebinar.com and register for that. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.